You mean to tell me the most feared warrior in the galaxy broke his arm saving a puppy? Captain Drax of the Thorian Union stared at the human in front of him, disbelief playing on his furred face. The human, a tall, broad-shouldered man named Sergeant Logan, just grinned and shrugged as if this was an everyday occurrence. Not just any puppy, Logan replied. It was trapped under some rubble after your orbital strike. We couldn't just leave it there. Drax blinked. Your squad was under heavy fire. You abandoned cover for that. Logan leaned back against the wall, seemingly unbothered by the Thorians' rising confusion. Around them, the makeshift command post buzzed with activity. Human soldiers and Thaian officers worked side by side, their alliance still fresh and fragile after decades of mutual distrust. The humans' ability to thrive in chaos was something Drax couldn't decide was admirable or deeply concerning. It's not about abandoning anything, Logan said, folding his arms. It's about doing what's right. If you're going to fight, you've got to protect the innocent, whether they've got 2 legs or 4. Drax muttered something in his native tongue. The equivalent of humans are insane. He paced back and forth, his tail flicking in agitation. You risked your life, you endangered your mission, all for an animal that isn't even your species. Logan smirked. To be fair, we also patch up thoraxians when they're hurt. Don't act like we're selective with our kindness. Drax paused mid-step, turning to face Logan. Kindness, he repeated, his voice heavy with skepticism. Is that what you call it? A traitor to your species could have been lying in that rubble, and you still would have acted the same way. Yep, Logan said without hesitation. That's the thing about humans. We don't pick and choose who deserves help when it's needed. Drax shook his head, his large triangular ears twitching. He was no stranger to war, having seen battlefields stretch across stars. But these humans baffled him at every turn. Their species had entered the galactic stage only a century ago, yet in that short time, they had managed to defy all logic and reason. They fought like berserkers, their small, fragile bodies somehow enduring wounds that would kill a Thorian outright. And when they weren't fighting, they were doing things like this, saving puppies. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, the ground beneath them shook violently. Dust rained from the ceiling, and alarms blared across the base. A young Thaian soldier rushed in, his orange fur bristling. Captain, the enemy is launching a full-scale assault on the eastern perimeter. Drax's hand instinctively went to the hilt of his plasma blade. He looked at Logan, expecting the human to spring into action. But to his surprise, the sergeant was already halfway out the door, barking orders to his men. Grab the heavy guns. Jenkins, take point. Make sure the medics are ready for evac. Within seconds, Logan's squad was mobilizing, their movements efficient and precise. The humans didn't just fight, they adapted. They anticipated. Drax followed with his own troops, falling into formation as the 2 forces headed toward the eastern wall. As they arrived, the scene was pure chaos. Explosions lit up the night sky, and enemy soldiers, a mix of reptilian vorats and insectoid screel, were pouring through a breach in the perimeter. The defenders were outnumbered, but Drax knew better than to underestimate the humans. He had seen them fight before, and it was nothing short of terrifying. Logan's squad moved like a well-oiled machine, each soldier covering the other as they advanced. The sergeant himself was at the forefront, wielding a modified rail gun that tore through enemy ranks with devastating efficiency. Drax couldn't help but marvel at the human tenacity. They fought not just to survive, but to protect. During a brief lull in the fighting, Drax noticed something peculiar. A young Vorath soldier had been injured, its leg caught under a collapsed barricade. The reptilian creature hissed in pain, its sharp claws scraping against the debris. None of its comrades stopped to help. They simply moved on, leaving it to its fate. Logan, of course, noticed. Drax could see the conflict in his eyes. The Voraths were ruthless enemies, known for their merciless tactics and disdain for weakness. By all rights, Logan should have ignored the wounded soldier. But the human hesitated for only a moment before making his decision. "Cover me," Logan shouted, charging toward the fallen Vorith. Drax watched in stunned silence as the sergeant lifted the debris with a grunt, freeing the enemy. The Vorith hissed and snapped its jaws, clearly confused by the act of mercy. Logan didn't flinch. "Get out of here," he barked, gesturing toward the forest beyond the base. "You can't fight like this, and I'm not dragging you to our medics." The Vorith stared at him for a moment before limping away, disappearing into the darkness. Drax approached, his expression unreadable. "Why?" he asked simply. Logan wiped the sweat from his brow. "Because if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight." Before Drax could respond, another explosion rocked the area. The fighting resumed with renewed intensity, and the moment was lost. But as the battle raged on, the Thorian captain found himself replaying Logan's words in his mind. Humans were fragile. They were reckless. They were, by all accounts, utterly baffling. But as Drax watched them fight, he realized something else. Their strength didn't just come from their resilience or their technology. It came from something deeper, something he couldn't quite put into words yet, something that perhaps the galaxy could learn from. The camp was alive with a strange energy as the soldiers, both human and Thorian, worked together to rebuild what they could. The battle had taken its toll, and the scars of the fight were evident everywhere: shattered structures, scorched earth, and the tired faces of those who had fought through the night. Yet, amidst the destruction, there was a shared sense of accomplishment, a fragile but growing bond between the two species. Logan stood near the edge of the camp, watching as the Thorian medics tended to their wounded with tools and techniques borrowed from their human allies. The sight brought a flicker of satisfaction to his face. It wasn't just about winning the fight. It was about what came after, the connections forged in the heat of battle that could last far longer than any war. Drax approached him, his expression more thoughtful than usual. The Thorian captain's fur was matted with dust and blood, his movements slower, but his eyes still carried their sharp intelligence. He stopped beside Logan, letting the silence between them stretch for a moment before speaking. "You humans," Drax began, his tone carrying both curiosity and resignation. "You don't just fight to survive. You fight for something more. I see that now, but I don't fully understand it." Logan chuckled, folding his arms as he looked out over the horizon. "It's not about understanding, Captain. It's about believing. If you only fight to survive, you're just delaying the inevitable. But if you fight for something bigger, for hope for a future, you've got a reason to keep going, no matter how hard it gets." Drax nodded slowly, his tail flicking in thought. "Hope. It seems like such a fragile thing. Yet, somehow, it's your greatest strength." Logan glanced at him, his grin softening into a more serious expression. "Fragile? Yeah, maybe. But it's what keeps us moving forward. And if there's one thing humans are good at, it's moving forward, no matter what." The two stood there in silence for a while, the faint sounds of the camp bustling around them. For all their differences, in that moment, they shared a quiet understanding. The battles ahead would be fierce, the challenges relentless, but together they had a chance. As the sun rose higher into the sky, its light breaking through the clouds and illuminating the battered battlefield, Drax found himself wondering if Logan was right. Perhaps the humans had brought more than just chaos and unpredictability to the galaxy. Perhaps they had brought something the galaxy desperately needed, a reason to believe in a better tomorrow.